Hey, everybody, welcome to Your Money Map, sponsored by the Alliance for Lifetime Income. I'm your host, Jean Chatzky. Thanks so much for joining us today. Summer travel season. It is officially in full swing. And in case you had any doubts, jet setters are breaking records to prove it. Case in point. On the Sunday following July 4th, 3 million passengers made their way through airport security checkpoints in the United States. That is a new record high when it comes to air travel. And according to one recent survey, 82% of people, 8 out of 10, more than 8 out of 10, indicated that they will travel at least once this summer. Even as inflation puts a strain on household budgets, people are finding room in their budgets to pack their bags and just go. How and why are they doing it? And if you have yet to make your travel plans for this summer, can you still get a good deal? Where are those good deals to be had? My guest today is here to answer those questions and so many more, including your travel questions. We love it when this show is more of a conversation. So whether you are joining us on LinkedIn, whether you're joining us on Facebook, if you've got a question about traveling this summer or beyond, please drop it in the comments. We'll weave it into the conversation and get you maybe the best answer on the planet. That is because my guest today is Peter Greenberg. You know him as the travel detective. He broadcasts breaking news and investigative reports from around the world each week as travel editor for CBS News. He's also the host of the public television show, The Travel Detective with Peter Greenberg, as well as Eye on Travel, which I love to catch when I'm in my car. It's a radio program that broadcasts from a different place each week, ranging from major cities to remote locations all around the globe. He has been leading the way in the travel industry for so many years, racking up numerous awards, including being named by Travel Weekly as one of the most influential people in travel and being inducted into the U.S. Travel Association's Hall of Leaders. He's also a good friend of mine, and it is a pleasure to see him. Peter, welcome to the show.
I am happy to be back with you, Jean, and lovely to see you.
It is great to see you. So as I said, this summer is shaping up to be the summer of travel. We're breaking records. People are just going. Where are they going, and why is this the summer of travel?
Well, let me answer the second question first, because they're going everywhere. But the reason why they're going goes back to the pandemic, because during the pandemic, so many of us, we're basically confronted with our own sense of mortality. Either we got COVID and thankfully survived, or worse, good friends and loved ones got it and didn't. And all of a sudden, we changed our purchasing patterns almost overnight. We weren't interested in material goods, in new cars or clothing or jewelry or expensive electronic items. We had this conversation props with just ourselves saying, I have no idea how long I'm going to be on the planet, so I'm not going to buy all that stuff. Instead, I want to buy experience. And so we came out of the gate screaming for travel, and we haven't stopped since. Many of us actually came out of the gate screaming for travel. We weren't even price sensitive, and we didn't care what it cost. We were just going to pay for it no matter what. And as a result, we're seeing right now, we're not only breaking records about travel, we're breaking record prices. Airfares have never been higher. Hotel rooms have never been higher. Airplanes have never been more crowded, if that's even physically possible. And the real question then becomes your second question or your first question, how are we going to get there? And how are we going to get there affordably and not have to stand in line and be victims of over-tourism? Because at the end of the day, we all still do want to go.
There's been a lot of research on experiences when it comes to being a good way to actually use the limited financial resources that we have. And a lot of that research points to the fact that experiences actually makes us happier than things. I mean, you've been more places than anybody I know. Do you find that to be the case?
every single time. And it doesn't matter. The destination only becomes incidental to the experience itself. I could have an amazing experience in Newark and a pretty terrible one in Paris. So if I can get a great one in Paris, it's a win-win for everybody. And the whole idea is people are now throwing out their bucket list. It's no longer the usual suspects of destinations, and it's no longer the usual experiences. People are perceiving themselves, or they really are more physically active, and they don't want to necessarily be confronted with what they can't do. It's all about what they can do, and they really want to do that, whether it's immersing themselves in a culture, in a figurative way or in a literal way.
When we're talking about where people are going, are there hot spots where you see more people going than other places, either domestically or abroad?
Well, yes, I do, but I got to qualify that. The fact that more people are going doesn't mean they're smart about it. It means that they're going where they think they want to go. The next thing you know, they're in the world's longest line waiting for bad service. I mean, the word over tourism was topic A before the pandemic. It's really topic A now. And you're seeing countries like Greece and the Netherlands and Italy and Spain and even remoter places like Greenland try to stop people from coming because there are just too many. Imagine this. Today, I'm in New York. It's 100 degrees plus weather. Well, how hot is it in Greece right now? 30,000 people a day trying to climb up to the Acropolis in 110-degree weather. I mean, it's become a medical emergency. And the Greek government's solution to that is, we'll limit it to 20,000 people a day. That's not a solution. In Venice, they're charging people a €5 fee if they can't prove they have a hotel reservation. In Amsterdam, they moved the cruise ships so they wouldn't dock in the center of town because it got too crowded. In Barcelona, here's a funny one. People in Barcelona actually removed municipal bus lines from Google Maps if the bus line went by places that were of interest to tourists because locals couldn't even get on the buses.
Wow.
So the fact that more people are going there doesn't mean they're making an intelligent decision. The key is to figure out where you can go and have a great experience without standing in line, without overpaying, where the US dollar is still strong, and then you have a great experience.
So flip the question. If I haven't made travel plans yet for this summer and I do want to go, let's say in August, where should I be looking where I'm not going to potentially encounter those problems that you're talking about, where I can get a fairly good deal, maybe where my dollar goes pretty far?
Well, two things that work here. One, you mentioned the power of the dollar, and two, seasonality. Right now in the post-pandemic world, seasonality doesn't exist anymore. There are no seasons. People are traveling 12 months a year. So now what you want to do is to follow the power of the US dollar. And where's the US dollar strongest? Try Argentina, where they've always devalued the peso. And when we talk about the power of the US dollar in terms of foreign currency, we're not talking just about airfares or hotel rates, because some of those can be adjusted. No, we're talking about the cost of basic goods and services. What does it cost for the locals to buy a tube of toothpaste, take a taxi ride, have dinner? I mean, they can't adjust those rates. And all of a sudden, when you see a taxi ride in Buenos Aires to the airport, which would cost you for the same distance over $100 in Manhattan, costing you $6 in Buenos Aires, you get the idea. A dinner out with wine is maybe $14, right? That's a huge idea. And by the way, you get to embrace that. And Argentina is not just the only example. South Africa, where the rand has been basically discounted for years against the dollar and devalued as well. Turkey. The Turkish lira about 15 years ago was 1.1 to the US dollar. Today it's 32 to the US dollar. I mean, unbelievable opportunities there to see an amazing country. Thailand, Japan, for the first time, the yen has been devalued against the US dollar. Opportunities there, not just in Tokyo, but throughout the entire country. And you can go on and on and on. There are about 20 of these countries right now where the US dollar really is king and they're not overcrowded. Not one of those countries, with the exception of Japan that I mentioned, is going to make you stand in line.
I had the surreal experience of being in Buenos Aires a year and change ago over the Christmas, New Year's holidays and exchanging some cash.
Yeah.
I exchanged about $300 and came out with a stack of cash stuffed into 3 envelopes. I felt like I had robbed a bank. And truth be told, I had trouble spending it all over the course of the week that I was there. It
Agreed.
was it.
And look, the food is great. The wine is great. The topography is unbelievable because you don't just have the cities like Buenos Aires or Mendoza where you have the wine country. You know, there are 880 wineries in Mendoza that makes like Napa Valley look like nothing. And then, of course, you've got Patagonia. And then you go further south to places like Ushuaia, you're now at the gateway to the Antarctic. So lots of great opportunity. And that's just one country.
When we talk about travel trends, one of the things that we hear from people in retirement or heading into retirement is that this is where a lot of my money is going to go. I've been waiting. I'm going to travel. Haley asked a question in the chat. She's in her 30s and she wants to know how much she should be putting away for travel. When you look at seniors, how big a chunk of their budget does this eat up?
Well, it does eat up a big chunk of the budget, but if you plan properly, it won't. Interesting survey happened about 5 months ago that said that 37% of Americans would be willing to go into debt to pay for their travel. That's the one thing you don't want to do. Here's what's going on now. We're all travel junkies. We're all travel addicts. And the airlines and the banks are really not doing us a good service because what they're doing now is they're saying, hey, if you sign up for this credit card, you're going to get so many bonus miles. You can fly anywhere we fly. And all these options come to you with the acceptance of that card. What they're not telling you is 27% interest on that card. 27, some of them are 29%. That's compounded interest. You know all about that, Gene. And here's the problem. Only 51% of Americans pay their credit card bills in full every month. So here we have people who can't wait to travel. They sign up for these cards with these mileage bonuses that maybe the airlines don't even let you redeem. And by the time you get those tickets, when you figure out what you spent on interest on the unpaid balance, you could have bought an entire airline. So yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So how do you get a decent deal on airfare? I mean, it's become a bit of a game. I've got 3-4 weddings coming up later in the year. I've set Google alerts for various prices.
Yeah.
And when I see the prices go down to a point that seems reasonable, that's when I jump and buy the fare. But over half of Americans say that they will get on a plane at some point this summer. What's the smart way to shop for air travel?
Well, there's a couple of ways to do it. One, don't go to primary airports. Go to alternate airports. Go to Providence instead of Boston. Go to Oakland instead of San Francisco. Go to Midway in many cases in terms of Chicago, or the all-time great secret airport for Chicago is Milwaukee. And all of a sudden, you're going to see some better deals. But then you can be strategic if you're going overseas. So, for example, if I wanted to go today from Atlanta to Johannesburg, the round-trip coach airfare is $6,000. Oh. Business class is $16,000. And I like to joke, that's not a ticket, that's a Toyota. So what do? You actually combine that trip with 5 other trips and you go around the world on something called an RTW ticket. That's called Round the World. And any airline can sell you that ticket because they do it in conjunction with their partner airlines in their strategic alliances. So American is like One World, United is the Star Alliance, Delta is the Sky Team. So Delta is basically combined with Air France and KLM and Korean. American's got British Airways and Qantas and so many others. United has got Lufthansa and Air New Zealand. And the cost of an RTW ticket, the only requirement is you have to stay in the same direction. You can't double back. The cost of an RTW ticket business class for me to go to 7 different destinations around the world is $14,000, less than the cost of one round trip ticket between Atlanta and Johannesburg. And for coach, it's about the same. Maybe for about $5,000, $6,000, you get to go around the world and see all your dysfunctional relatives. It's phenomenal.
What if I don't have that much time? What if I'm looking at August and I just want to go somewhere this August? It's probably a little late to be shopping for airfare, but maybe not. What's the strategy if I still want to travel this summer?
Well, funny you should mention August, because historically, Americans don't really travel that much during national election years every 4 years. This year was the exception, but August becomes the exception to that. Airfares have been ridiculously high until August. For whatever reason, I can't figure it out, but airfares are coming down for the month of August. They've been strong all the way through until August. Maybe people are now saying, okay, I'm going to stay home now, or maybe those credit card bills have come in and they really can't afford it, or they don't think they can. But if you planned it properly, you will see airfares start to come down in about 2 weeks, and they'll stay down probably through the end of the year. So that's a good thing. The second thing is, again, I mentioned alternate airports in the US. Think alternate airports overseas. Don't necessarily think Heathrow. Think Gatwick. Don't necessarily think Charles de Gaulle. Think Orly. Don't necessarily think all those other airports that you think about, and then think about the train. That's the way to do it. So if you want to go to Europe, you buy this in conjunction with your round trip airline ticket. You get a Eurail pass. I mean, I did that when I was in college. I think you may have done it too. But now when we were in college, here's where we get to date ourselves. When we were in college, that Eurail pass may only apply to maybe 8 countries. Now it applies to 30 countries.
Wow.
And it's a great deal. You can buy them in increments of 1 week, 2 week, a month. And if you plan it properly, remember, you get on-off privileges, right? It's a pass good for that period of time. You can plan it so that maybe you take a couple of night sleeper trains and you're saving money on hotels every other city. And it works. And by the way, with all due respect to Amtrak, the Eurail pass not only works, but those trains are on time and they're great.
When we buy airline tickets these days, it almost feels like we're ordering off a McDonald's menu, that there are so many different choices. Do I want economy? Do I want economy plus? Do I want economy plus with early boarding or extra legroom? Do I want to jump up to business class? Do you want fries with that? Like, how do you know, where is there a sweet spot in terms of the best category to buy?
There is, and we can talk about all those other junk fees in a second. But in terms of how you approach just the basic airline reservation, the very first fare that you see online, and most of the people watching me right now are probably going to make a mistake, and the mistake is that they're buying it online. I'm a huge fan of researching online, but then talking to a human being. And the reason for that is what you're seeing on your computer screen is not all the inventory. It's only seeing what that travel provider wants you to see or wants to steer you to. It's okay to research online, but the internet's not necessarily your friend. Pick up the phone.
When you say talk to a person,
yeah,
okay.
Travel advisor or travel agent, and in many cases, the airline itself. And I can give you many examples of where that's come to save me. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is the fare you're going to pay. The very first fare you see online is absolutely not the fare you want to pay, because that usually translates into 2 words that are dreadful. It's called basic economy. And I have a favorite line. I'll say it again. Friends do not let friends fly basic economy because you have no rights, you have no refund, you get no mileage, you get nothing. The only people who should be flying basic economy are either members of the witness relocation program or fugitives from justice, because I presume in both cases you'll be traveling very light. But if you take a look at the next fare category under the first one that you see, it's only about $30 more, and that gives you regular main cabin where you have rights and choices. Now, of course, there's always the upsell for the seat, and there's always the upsell for the baggage, and there's always the upsell for, as you mentioned, in some cases, early boarding. But at the end of the day, you're all going to the same place anyway. And I have never understood why first class boards first, because then you're just sitting there. I'd much rather board last and then the plane can take off. But forgetting that, the real reason why people board first now is the dirty little secret of the airlines. The airlines have crammed too many seats in the planes now, so that there's not a single plane of a single airline that could accommodate even one carry-on bag per person per plane. It's physically impossible, which is why you see so many bags being gate checked at the gate to go in the cargo hold, because all the overhead space has been taken. That's why people want to board first. It becomes a rat race to get on there just to be able to stow your bag in the overhead compartment. It's really, truly unfair, especially to those people who paid to check their bags only to be offered later that the airline will check in other people's bags at the gate for free. It's a double standard.
I have stopped checking bags to begin with because I know that they're going to offer to check it for free,
Well,
right? And so,
my favorite line, and I live for this, is there are only two kinds of airline bags: carry on and lost. And and so what I did for years until I even got smarter about packing, I didn't, you know what? I didn't get smarter about packing. I got married, and my wife takes care of that now because I'm an idiot when it comes to that. But what I did for 20 years, I FedExed my bags.
oh,
I saved 2.5 hours of my life by not having to schlep it into the airport and not having to go to baggage claim with 16,000 other refugees, hoping that my bag was on the same flight that I was. So with the exception of international flights, where you really do have to check some bags sometimes, on domestic flights, I'm not checking anything.
yeah, totally agree. One area of travel we know has really bounced back post-pandemic is cruising. What are you seeing in that space? And, is it still the preferred mode of travel for many people in and around retirement?
Well, I will start with a story about my mother. When my mother turned 80 a number of years ago, I wanted to give her a present, and I gave her a cruise. And you know what she said to me? I don't want to be on a ship with a lot of old people. Well, guess what? It turns out she was the oldest person on the ship, and she was dancing every night and having the time of her life. The median age of cruise ship passengers has come down. The old line that the people who are on cruise ships were newlywed or nearly dead is no longer applicable. In fact, the average age of a cruise ship passenger now is about 52, which is a huge drop in that average years. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing that happened during the pandemic, you may remember this, all cruising stopped. The Centers for Disease Control put a moratorium on. It was an all stop, a complete stop for 18 months. Nothing cruised. And during that period of time, all the cruise ships had to comply with about 75 different protocols from the CDC in terms of social distancing, food preparation, ventilation, you name it. And they did. But something else happened. What happened during that time was that the shipyards were not idle. They were continuing to build ships of every size and pedigree. And as a result, we now have more choice than ever about the kind of ship we want to be on, where it's going, and what we get to do. Here's a piece of information that'll make us all feel old. The Love Boat. We all remember that show. When the Love Boat first came on the air, do you know how many ports of call there were for cruise ships? Take a guess.
10?
You're close, about 8. And 4 of them were Nassau. Okay, so, I mean, not a lot of choice. You know how many there are today?
46. I just
no,
guessed.
Now you're not going to the Showcase Showdown. Sorry. 1,200. 1,200. And that
Whoa.
means you can go just about anywhere, right? I mean, it's not just going to Nassau. It's not just going to Bermuda. Now you can go to the Kimberleys in Northwest Australia, the most amazing coastline you'll ever see. You can go to St. Helena, an island in the middle of the South Atlantic. I mean, I could go on for 3 or 4 hours just on that alone. And then, of course, for price point, they've been able to segment the offerings in such a way that you can pick your ship, not just based on destination or length of the ship or length of the trip, but based on the experience you want to have. And that's a huge change now. And more people are traveling by ship. Why? Because they can. Do you know how many Americans have ever been on a cruise ship as a percentage of the population? It's only 13%. And most of that 13% are repeaters. So there are a lot of new people coming in, but it hasn't even scratched the surface yet in terms of the number of people that want to go and by the way, in the next 5 years, will go.
If I am buying a particular kind of an insurance policy, let's say I'm buying long-term care insurance, I want to talk to an expert in long-term care insurance, somebody who sells a lot of that. I would imagine that the same thing is true if I want to take a cruise to Alaska. I want to talk to somebody who really knows the market for cruises to Alaska at all
Absolutely.
the different price points. How do I find that person? And then in cruising, where it seems like there are always deals, but bring another person for free. How do I know if the deal that I'm getting is actually a deal?
Well, let's go back to the first question, and that is, we live in a world of specialization. And so you need some help with people who have preferred supplier relationships with those cruise lines. That's where the travel advisors come in. There are two consortia out there that their advisors specialize very specifically in cruises, but even beyond that, in river cruises, in European cruises, in Asian cruises, everything you can imagine. One is called Signature, and the other is called Virtuoso. They all have either signature.com or virtuoso.com. And when you go online, and they're going to ask you, where do you want to go, and how do you want to go, and do you have a preference of? And the next thing you know, you're going to be talking to an advisor who will be specializing in bicycle travel in Burgundy, because that's all they do. And next thing you know, you're talking to somebody who has local knowledge and can really give you that answer or those answers that you need. Now, in terms of getting the deals, again, it's not just go bring somebody for free. Things have changed. What's the most dreaded thing for seniors when it comes to travel by cruises? The demand and the requirement for double occupancy in the cabin. A lot of seniors don't do double occupancy. They're traveling as solo travelers. And the cruise lines have finally woken up to realize there's an economic power here with seniors who want to travel by themselves and are very comfortable traveling by themselves, but don't want to pay that dreaded single supplement. So they're actually, when I told you about the cruise lines and the shipyards being producing all these ships, they're now designing ships with many, many single cabins that are priced reasonably and not where you get that dreaded supplement. And it's a great deal. And all those travel advisors can give you that information based on your area of affinity and your budget and your destination.
I mentioned insurance. Whether you buy an airplane ticket or some other sort of a trip these days, that's a question that you get asked. Do you want insurance? Do you want it for your plane ticket? Do you want to insure your trip? Let me ask you, do you want it at this point for your trip in this day and age when COVID seems to keep coming back over and over again? And if you do buy it, does it have to be cancel for any reason coverage?
Okay, let's start out with how most people see their insurance opportunities, and that's when they go online. And the problem with booking something online is if I want to book an airline ticket today, I cannot finish that transaction unless I opt in or opt out of the insurance question, not knowing what I'm covered for, and worse, not knowing what I'm not covered for. And the problem there is that insurance, anybody who buys travel insurance online, I will personally come to your house and slap you. Do not do it, because you have no idea what you're covered for or what you're not covered for. And what we learned during the pandemic, and people learned it painfully, is, of course, you never went to page 15 of their website. You just opted in or opted out, only to discover during the pandemic that on paragraph 9 of their website, it said, oh, we don't cover for pandemic, bye-bye. So you bought worthless insurance, right? That's number one. And what that insurance was what? Trip interruption and cancellation insurance. With so many exclusions, it really didn't help you. That was during the pandemic. There's another kind of coverage you need to get, which is medical evacuation and repatriation insurance. That is essential. I have had it for 25 years. If there was wood around here, I'd knock on it because I've never had to use it, but I'm sure glad I have it. And in essence, what that is that if you get sick or injured anywhere overseas, that coverage will pay to get you medically stabilized where you are. And then on the best policies, they will then consult with your personal physician. After all, who knows your medical history better than your own doctor? And then they will then make the decision of how to get you back with a medically equipped jet or to the medical facility and doctor of your choice. That's in the best policies. Again, you have to read the fine print. That's why you want to have a conversation with a travel advisor, because they can all sell that policy to you, but they can also interpret the hieroglyphics in that language so you understand, again, what you're covered for and what you're not. Now, you answered about you asked about CFAR, cancel for any reason. It's a very good policy if you understand the premium you're paying, because if you're buying a $59 ticket on Southwest, don't buy it. But if you've got a $6,000 cruise, you might want to buy it, especially if you know that maybe the person you're traveling with might have a medical issue, or somebody in your family might have there may be a schedule change. That's fine, but keep in mind that on some of these policies, It is cancel for any reason, but when you do that, you can lose up to 50% of your travel investment. You may only get back 50%. Sometimes it could be as high as 75%, but you need to know that going in. And it's a high premium going in as well.
Are there certain circumstances under which your credit cards provide you with the coverage that you need for things like medical evacuation and trip cancellation?
I will give you a qualified yes, but here comes the qualification. You got to read the language. On some of these credit card policies, for example, if you're renting a car, they say, oh, if you rent the car, you'll get, and you with this credit card, you get insurance. Really? You read the fine print, you find out what they're only offering you is secondary insurance that only kicks in if you exhaust the policy limits of your primary insurance. And if you didn't get primary insurance, you have no insurance. That's the first problem. On the medical evacuation part, the answer is a qualified yes as well. But keep in mind, the fine print can say they will fly you to the medical facility and doctor of their choice. And I'm sorry, Gene, I don't want to be in a bad HMO in a third world country. So you need to be able to have that conversation with someone who knows the language so you know what you're covered for.
While we're talking about credit cards, you mentioned credit card points earlier and how it's become more difficult to use your points. What are the smart ways for people who pay off their credit cards? If you don't pay off your credit card, by the way, I'm with Peter. You should not be struggling to earn miles and points and things like that. It's much better to have a credit card that has a lower interest rate. But if you do pay off your credit card every single month, what are the smart points plays?
The smartest points play now is to not have a credit card that's directly linked to an individual airline's frequent flyer program. That's a lost leader. What you want to do instead is get a cash back card. There's so many different cashback cards out there. That's a tangible asset in your pocket, and something you can actually use. You're not chasing miles that are not available or trying to redeem miles that are so high on the redemption levels that they become impossible, right? It used to be when they started these programs that if you had 25,000 miles, you could redeem it for a quote unquote free domestic coach ticket. Now you're lucky if you get it for 80,000 miles, and that's only if the airline wants to give it to you, and they're going to charge you a fee and above that. There's no such thing as a great free mileage ticket. So why play that game with a credit card that only gives you miles that you may not ever be able to redeem? Get a cashback card, or a number of companies like Capital One and Chase and others will give you a card that will give you points that equate to dollars, and they'll buy the ticket for you. It'll be a cash purchase ticket, but it's something of value. You can actually use it. You're not waiting for somebody to give you some sort of papal dispensation about mileage.
Last question, Peter. We talk a lot about retirement on this show. We are in what the Alliance for Lifetime Income calls the peak 65 zone. The fact that more people are turning 65 every single day for the next couple of years than at any other point in history. When you're 65, sometimes even when you're 60, there are discounts often available for the asking. What are the travel discounts that people should know about but don't?
Well, I'm sad to report there are few and far between. And the reason for that is, let's go back 20 years where there was such a thing for airline tickets as a senior discount or a senior fare. That doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't. And if there are senior discounts, you've got to put that in perspective because they're going to give you a percentage discount off their highest published fare. It's not a discount at all. So right now, you know what? I have not been able to find a senior discount on an airline ticket, occasionally a senior discount on a hotel room, and occasionally one on a cruise ship, but that usually is associated with like more people traveling together in a group as opposed to your age. So right now, I think we'd all be agreeing that age is irrelevant anymore, for me at least. And I no longer search for the discount. I just search for the availability.
From your mouth, there we go. Age is irrelevant. Peter Greenberg, the travel detective, where should we go to get more of your amazing information?
Well, I'm going to give you the name of our website, which we had a committee meeting on. It's so imaginative, petergreenberg.com. And by the way, it's free. We're not transactional in any way. We sell nothing. It's only information. We update it every week with information you need to know on the process of travel so you don't get abused going to the destination you really want to go to.
Thank you so much.
You got it, Jane.
And for more information from us, you're going to want to sign up for our newsletter, the Alliance for Lifetime Income newsletter, where we digest and then give you all the retirement information that you need to know, once again, on a weekly basis. And you can find that at protectedincome.org/subscribe. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.